Okay, section 1.4, number 89. Determine the average rate of change of the function on the given interval. So we have a function, m of x equals the square root of x, and we're trying to find the average rate of change of the function on the given interval. So in part A, the interval is from 0 to 1. All right, let's go back and look at the problem we did in class real quick. And you remember that we said that the average rate of change on the interval from x1 to x2 is equal to the slope of the secant line that passes through the points x1 f of x1 and x2 f of x2. All right, so when we did the problem in class, we have this function, it's this parabola, x squared minus 1, and we were finding the average rate of change on the interval from x sub 1 equals negative 2 to x sub 2 equals 0. So on this interval from negative 2 right here to 0, what is the average rate of change of this function? It's coming down like that, right? To do that, to find out, we have to find the 2 points on the function at x sub 1 equals negative 2 and x sub 2 equals 0. So when x sub 1, when we're at negative 2, the beginning of the interval, the value of the function, you can see the function is x squared minus 1. So when x is negative 2, the value of this function is 4 minus 1, which is 3. So this point is where we're starting when we draw our secant line. And then when x sub 2, when x is 0, we know the value of this function is just negative 1. So this point right here. So we drew the line through those 2 points, and then we just found the slope of the line. So negative 1 minus 3 over 0 minus negative 2. And we got negative 4 over 2, which was negative 2. So that is the average rate of change on the interval from negative 2 to 0 for this parabola. If we were going to do this problem, we want to know average rate of change of this function on this interval from 0 to 1. So that interval is x sub 1, x sub 2. These are the x values I'm talking about on this function. And if we had the graph of this function, it looks like this, all right? So if we were going to do this, if we had a picture and we said, all right, what does this function look like on the interval from 0 to 1? Well, here's 0 and here's 1. This is the interval from 0 to 1. The function has a value of 0 when x is 0. You can see if you put 0 in for x into the function, m of 0 is equal to 0. So this is the point 0, 0. And then if x is 1, m of 1 is square root of 1, which is 1. So the point 1, 1 is also right there. So if I draw the secant line through those 2 points and I find the slope of that secant line, all right, when x is 0, y is 0, so that's the first point. And then when x is 1, y is 1. So the slope is 1 minus 0 over 1 minus 0, which is just 1. So the average rate of change on the interval from 0 to 1 is 1. So that would be the answer to part A. All right. I'm going to go back to not having the picture on part C, but I just want to do one more where you can actually see the graph and understand what's going on. So, all right, now we want to talk about the interval from 1 to 4. Again, this is an interval on the x-axis. As x goes from 1 to 4, question is, what is this function doing? What is it? How fast is it increasing or decreasing or whatever it's doing? All right. So to figure that out, we want to draw a line through those 2 points, but we need to know what those 2 points are because we're going to find the slope of the line through those 2 points. That's the average rate of change. All right. So what are the 2 points? Well, we know that when x is 1, we already figured that out. Square root of 1 is 1. So this point is 1, 1. And then over here, when x is 4, the second number in that interval, the last number in that interval, we know that we're going to have m of 4 is the square root of 4 because that's what this function is. So that'd be 2. So the point 4, 2 is that second point. And we find the slope of that line. That will be the average rate of change for this function on the interval from 1 to 4. So all we do is find the slope. So 2 minus 1 over 4 minus 1 is going to be 1 over 3. So the average rate of change as you go from 1 to 4 on the x-axis for this function is 1 over 3. All right, so you don't have to have the picture to do it. All you have to do is look at the interval. So the interval is x sub 1, x sub 2. So let's do part C. The point we're starting at is when x is 4. So when x is 4, the function has a value of 2, right? Because the square root of 4 is 2. So that's our first point. When x is 4, y is 2. Then 9, that's the last point. So m of 9 is equal to the square root of 9, which is 3. So the point, when x is 9, y is 3. So these are the 2 points that we're drawing a line through to find the slope of it to get our average rate of change. So we just find the slope, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and that is 1/5. So the average rate of change on the interval from 4 to 9 is 1/5.